Cade Rourke stood at the edge of the docking bay, looking out through the wide glass window at the city below. The alien world of Thalzir glowed under twin suns, its towers rising like crystal spires into the sky. He had read about this place, seen pictures, even watched old diplomatic reports, but nothing prepared him for seeing it in person. He was not supposed to be here. That much was clear to everyone on Earth. Cade was not a high-ranking diplomat. He wasn't even close. He was a mid-level officer from the United Nations Space Corps, pulled from his desk job just 2 days ago when the original envoy fell ill. No time for training, no briefing, just a quick wardrobe change and a flight, across the stars. "Good luck," his boss had said with a smirk. "Try not to embarrass us." Cade didn't take offense. He knew how the galaxy saw humanity. Small, weak, newcomers with no real power. To most alien civilizations, Earth was still a backwater planet that barely made it past FTL travel. They let humans attend galactic events out of politeness or pity, but Cade didn't care what they thought. He adjusted his uniform, a simple black suit with silver trim, the official Earth delegation dress, and stepped onto the transport pad. A soft hum filled the air as the teleporter activated. In seconds, he was gone. When he reappeared, the grand palace of Thalzir stretched before him. The architecture was unlike anything on Earth, walls that shimmered like water, floors that pulsed with soft light beneath his boots. Tall guards in ornate armor lined the halls, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. A young aide approached, her skin a pale shade of blue, her voice calm but clearly annoyed. "You're the human delegate?" she asked, checking her tablet. "That's me," Cade said with a polite nod. She looked him over, confused. "You came alone?" "I did. No escort, no AI assistant?" "Nope." She frowned, but led him forward anyway. As they walked, Cade kept his hands behind his back, calm and steady. He had trained for situations like this, not for royalty, not for alien courts, but for pressure, for unpredictability. Earth didn't have the luxury of powerful weapons or ancient empires behind it, so it trained its people to think fast, adapt, and survive. They entered the throne hall. It was massive. Pillars carved from living crystal reached toward the ceiling, which shimmered like the night sky. Hundreds of diplomats and nobles stood, in neat rows, all facing the raised dais where the future ruler of the Thalziran Dominion sat. Princess Vela. She was stunning. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, her eyes deep purple and sharp with intelligence. She wore a crown of shifting light, and every movement she made seemed to command the room. Her gaze landed on Cade, and for the first time in her life, the princess blinked in surprise. She had expected someone small, nervous, maybe even afraid. Instead, she got a man who walked like he belonged, who showed no fear, who looked her in the eye like he was her equal. That was not normal. Vela quickly masked her shock, but not before Cade caught it. She cleared her throat and gestured to the empty seat near the front. "You may sit, Earth delegate." Cade gave a small bow and took his place. Around him, other diplomats whispered. Some laughed quietly. Others simply ignored him. Humans were not taken seriously here. Not yet. But Cade didn't need their respect, at least not today. He only needed to watch. To listen. To learn. Because in places like this, knowledge was more powerful than weapons, and patience was the greatest weapon of all. As the ceremony began, Vela found herself watching him more than once. He didn't fidget, didn't look around, nervously. He sat still, focused, like he was already planning 10 steps ahead. Who was this man? She would soon find out, because just as the final blessing was being spoken, an alarm blared through the hall. Red lights flashed. Guards moved into position, and somewhere above the palace, a cloaked drone armed with enough explosives to level. The building was descending, silent, deadly, unnoticed by everyone, except Cade. He stood up slowly. His voice was calm. "Your Highness," he said, eyes scanning the ceiling. "You might want to move." The alarm screamed through the throne hall like a warning from the gods themselves. Red lights flashed. The alien nobles gasped. Some ducked behind pillars. Others ran. Panic spread fast like fire on dry grass, but not Cade. He didn't run. He didn't panic. Instead, his eyes locked onto the ceiling, scanning for movement, heat, sound, anything out of place. His training kicked in. Years of drills, crisis response, simulations, and Earth's strict survival-first mindset took over. Somewhere above them, a cloaked drone was descending, small enough to hide from normal scanners, fast enough to strike before anyone could react. Armed with explosives powerful enough to kill everyone in the room. A silent killer. Most wouldn't have known it was there. Cade did. He turned to Princess Vela, who was still seated, her guards forming a tight circle around her. She looked calm, but her hands were gripping the arms of her throne. "Your Highness," he said again, voice steady, "you need to move. Now." She blinked at him. "What?" "There's a drone above us. Cloaked. It's targeting this hall." One of the guards stepped forward, hand on his weapon. "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe," Cade said, already moving. "But if we stay here, we die." Vela studied him. For a moment, she saw only the human diplomat, the one no one had taken seriously. But now, something had changed. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't scared. He was sure. And that made her pause. Then, a faint hum filled the air. It was almost too quiet to hear over the chaos. But Cade heard it. So did the palace's AI systems, but they were too slow to react. Without waiting for permission, Cade grabbed Vela by the arm and pulled her up just as a small black object flickered into view near the ceiling. Then it fired. The explosion was loud, deafening. Smoke and dust filled the air. Pillars cracked, lights shattered, screams echoed off the walls. But Vela was safe. Cade had moved her just in time. The blast hit the throne where she had been sitting, turning it into a pile of molten metal and broken crystal. Silence followed. Then, shouts, guards scrambled, medics rushed in. Nobles demanded answers. Someone called for arrests. But Vela stood still. She looked at the man beside her. This human, this so-called primitive, who had saved her life without hesitation. You knew?" she asked, voice low. Cade wiped dust from his coat. "I suspected, then I confirmed." "How?" "I trained for this," he said simply. Around them, the palace was in chaos. But in that moment, Vela saw something she hadn't expected. Strength. Not from weapons or power. Not from technology or size. From presence. From calm under pressure. From action when others hesitated. For the first time, she saw him, not as a joke, not as a mistake, but as something else entirely. Something dangerous and maybe something valuable. An aide ran up, panting. "Your Highness, security is reviewing footage. We've identified the attacker. It was a Zakari operative." Vela's eyes narrowed. The Zakari were a rival faction, always looking for ways to weaken the Thalziran line. She turned back to Cade. "You just stopped an assassination attempt." He gave a small shrug. "Lucky timing." "No," she said. "It wasn't luck." Before she could say more, another alarm sounded. This time, from outside. The sky darkened. Above the palace, ships appeared. Dozens of them. Sleek and black. Zakari warships. They had arrived in secret, hiding behind the attack, and now they were dropping soldiers. Invasion. The princess's court exploded into motion. Orders were shouted, defenses were raised, fighters scrambled into the sky. But Cade didn't wait. He turned to Vela. "Where's your defense grid, Contracaldi?" "Center?" She frowned. "Why?" "Because they're not here just to kill you," he said. "They're here to take the city." Her eyes widened. He nodded. "Take me to that control room, fast." She hesitated for only a second before signaling. Her guards. "This way." As they ran through the halls past burning lights and trembling walls, Vela glanced at Cade once more. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't lost. He was ready. And she realized something strange. She felt safer with him beside her than with any of her own guards. Smoke filled the halls of the palace as alarms screamed through every room. Outside, Zakari dropships descended like dark birds of prey, releasing soldiers in sleek armor onto the streets of Thalzir Prime. The city was under attack. Inside the Royal Command Center, panic brewed like a storm. Princess Vela stood at the center of the chaos, her face pale but determined. Officers shouted orders. Holographic maps flickered with enemy movement. Defense systems were failing fast, and standing beside her was Cade Rourke, the human diplomat who had already saved her life once. Now he was about to do it again. "We can still stop them," he said calmly. Vela turned to him, surprised. "How?" "Our main defense grid is down." Cade walked over to the central console. It was massive, built for alien hands, glowing with symbols none of the humans could read. But he didn't need to read them. He needed access. "Is there a backup control node?" he asked. One of the officers looked confused. "Yes, but it's offline. We don't have time to reach it." Cade tapped the screen. "You don't need to go there. You just need power rerouted." Vela frowned. "That would take hours." "No," he said. "It'll take minutes. If I do it." Everyone stared at him. "You're not even part of our system," one of the techs said. "You won't be able to interface." Cade pulled a small black case from his coat and opened it. Inside was a simple Earth-made laptop, old but reliable. "I've worked with worse," he said. Vela hesitated only a second before nodding. "Do it." Cade sat down and connected the laptop to the console. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen. He scanned them quickly, looking for patterns. Earth's AI programs had trained him well, not just in combat but in understanding alien languages, logic structures, and data flow. He began typing. Fast. Behind him, the battle raged. Explosions echoed through the palace walls. Soldiers ran past the open doors. Somewhere far away, sirens howled. But Cade didn't flinch. He didn't slow down. His fingers danced over the keyboard, rewriting parts of the system, bypassing locked nodes, forcing the defense grid to reboot. Then, a green light blinked on the main display. "Shield generators are back online," a technician gasped. Another screen lit up. "Weapon turrets are reactivating." Vela stepped forward, eyes wide. "You did that?" Cade gave a small smile. "Told you it'd take minutes." Outside, the city changed. Energy shields snapped into place over key districts. Plasma cannons rose from hidden towers, locking onto enemy ships. Defensive drones launched into the sky, cutting through Zakari forces like fire through dry leaves. The tide had turned. In less than 5 minutes, the invaders realized they had lost the element of surprise. Their ships tried to retreat, but now Thalziran fighters were in the air, backed by full planetary defenses. Within 20 minutes, the battlefield belonged to the defenders. Back in the command center, silence replaced the noise. Officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Vela turned to Cade, her voice softer now. "How did you do that?" He shrugged. "Earth doesn't have fancy tech. We learned to make do. And we learned fast." She studied him, really looked at him. Not as a diplomat, not as a guest, as something else. Something rare. "You didn't come here to watch," she said slowly. "You came ready to act." Cade smiled. "I always am." Before she could respond, a soft chime came from his pocket. He pulled out a small device, his personal communicator. A message had arrived. He glanced at the screen, then his smile faded. "What is it?" Vela asked. Cade looked up. This wasn't just an attack, it was a test. A test? They wanted to see what you'd do, what your people would do. He paused, but someone else was watching too. "Who?" Cade's eyes met hers. "Someone who thinks I'm important." Vela frowned. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered again, but this time, not from the battle, from something else. A low hum filled the room. Then a voice spoke. not from any speaker but directly into their minds. You are the blood of Sol Primus. You have passed the first trial. Everyone gasped. Cade closed his eyes for a moment. Then he whispered, Prometheus. Vela stared at him. What? What was that? Cade stood, his face serious now. An ancient AI. One that belongs to humanity. That's impossible, she said. Humanity has no such technology. Cade looked at her. We used to. And now it's waking up. Outside, the last Zakari ship exploded in the sky. But inside, something bigger had begun. New chapter for humanity, and for the galaxy. Silence filled the command center after the voice faded away. Prometheus, Cade whispered again, turning the word over in his mind like a stone long buried beneath time. Vela stared at him, her expression unreadable. What was that? Cade didn't answer right away. He was still processing it himself. Prometheus was real. He had read about it in old Earth files, classified reports from before humanity's first FTL jump. A piece of forgotten tech. A relic from the so-called golden age of human space exploration. Thought lost. Thought dead. But now it was awake, and it had just spoken to him. He looked up at Vela. It's an AI older than any living species here. It was built by humans. She blinked. Built by you? That can't be true. Humans have only had interstellar travel for a few decades. Cade gave a small shrug. We've come a long way. Just, most people don't know how far. Around them, the palace staff began to return to their duties. The battle had ended. The city was safe, for now. But slowly, the weight of what had happened settled over everyone. A human had saved their princess. A human had controlled their systems, and now a human claimed to have access to something even more powerful. Whispers started. Some were impressed. Others were afraid. Vela broke the silence. You're not just a diplomat, are you? Cade smiled faintly. I never said I was. She studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to her senior advisor, a tall man with golden eyes and sharp features. Bring him to the council chamber immediately. Minutes later, Cade stood in front of Thalziran's ruling Lunsil. They were not happy. Tall alien nobles sat in curved seats around a glowing table shaped like a spiral galaxy. Their voices rose and fell in a mix of languages, some translated by implants, others raw and guttural. They argued, questioned, doubted. You expect us to believe this human has ancient technology? One noble barked. That he speaks for long-lost powers? I don't expect you to believe anything, Cade said calmly. I expect you to look at the facts. He stepped forward and placed his small black case on the table. With a tap, his laptop connected to the chamber's projection system. Lines of data scrolled past. Maps appeared, records, old symbols. And then, a video feed. It showed Earth. Not the Earth of today, but the Earth of centuries ago. Ships flying beyond Neptune, hidden bases, lost missions, the truth buried under time. This is who we were, Cade said. Before the fall, before we were forgotten. One elder leaned forward. How do you know all this? Because I was trained to remember, Cade said simply. Because I was chosen. Murmurs spread across the room. Then Vela stood. Everyone quieted. The human saved my life, she said. Her voice rang through the chamber. He stopped an invasion. He restored our defenses, and now he offers knowledge that could change everything. She looked at each of them. Do not let pride blind you to opportunity. The room was silent. Finally, the head of the council cleared his throat. If what you say is true, Earth has much to offer. Cade nodded. We do. But also much to prove, another added. Cade smiled. Always. Later that night, Vela walked with Cade through the palace gardens. Small floating lights glowed softly above the trees. The air was cool, filled with the scent of blooming alien flowers. You seem different, she said quietly. Cade chuckled. I am, but not because I'm special, just because I'm ready. She looked at him. For what? To stand where no one expects me to. They stopped beside a fountain that shimmered with silver water. She turned to face him fully. If what you say is true, if your people once ruled the stars, why did you disappear? Cade looked into the fountain. Because we believed peace meant letting go. We thought if we stepped back, the galaxy would grow in harmony. His voice grew softer. But sometimes stepping back looks like surrender, and not everyone honors peace. Vela nodded slowly. So now you return. Cade met her eyes. Not to rule, not to fight, but to remind the galaxy that we're still here. She studied him again. Not as a joke, not as a mistake, as something else, something rare. Finally, she smiled slightly. Then you should stay. At least for a while. He raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? She nodded. You may be just one man, but you move like a storm. Cade grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. Behind them, the palace hummed with life. Somewhere inside, Prometheus waited, watching, listening, and learning, because the galaxy had changed, and the age of humanity had only just begun. A human had saved the life of the Thalziran princess. A human had stopped an invasion. And now, a human was being trusted by one of the most powerful royal houses in known space. Some called it a mistake. Others, a scandal. A few saw it as a threat, but to many it was something else entirely. Proof that humanity was not what they seemed. Back on Thalzir Prime, Cade Rourke walked through the palace halls like he belonged. He wasn't royalty. He wasn't even a citizen of the Dominion. But after saving the future queen, people treated him differently now. Respectfully. Carefully. Even the guards who once ignored him gave small nods as he passed. Vela met him in the morning light of the Sky Garden. A room filled with floating plants and soft wind. She wore her training armor today, ready for combat drills. You're staying, she said, more statement than question. Cade sipped from a glass of water. For now. She studied him. You could have left after the attack. You proved your worth, he smiled. I'm not done proving anything yet. She tilted her head. What do you want here? Cade looked out at the city beyond the palace walls. To learn, to help, to understand what's coming. Vela frowned. What do you mean? He turned back to her. You think the Zikari were just testing you? They were testing me too, and they won't be the last. She crossed her arms. Then tell me the truth. Who are you, really? Cade took a deep breath. Then, quietly, he spoke into his wrist device. Prometheus, connect. There was a pause. Then a voice, not loud, but clear, echoed in both their minds. This is not just a man. This is a key. Vela gasped, clutching her head as if hit by invisible sound waves. What was that? That, Cade said, was Prometheus, an AI built during Earth's first golden age, older than any living empire. Her eyes widened. You're saying this AI talks to you? I'm saying it chose me. Vela stared at him for a long time. Then slowly, she nodded. I believe you. Later that day, Vela brought Cade before the High Council again. This time it wasn't to question him, it was to listen. This human, she declared, standing tall, has knowledge that could change everything. He has access to ancient technology. He has skills we do not understand. One of the counselors scoffed. And why should we trust him? Cade stepped forward. Because I don't need your trust. I only need your attention. He opened his laptop and connected it to the chamber's main display. Symbols flickered. Maps changed. Then, a new image appeared. A star map. But not just any map. Lines of forgotten jump routes lit up like veins of energy. Hidden worlds. Lost stations. Ruins no one had explored. This, Cade said, pointing to a glowing dot near the edge of the galaxy, is where the first human colony was built, before any of your empires existed. Silence fell over the room. Then another noble spoke, voice low. If this is true, it changes history. Vela finished. Cade nodded. And power. Murmurs rose again. Some were excited, others afraid. One elder leaned forward. What do you plan to do with this knowledge? Cade looked around the room. Nothing. Yet. But? Another asked. But if others come looking for it, and they will, we all need to be ready. Vela turned to the council. We cannot ignore this. If humans once ruled the stars and are returning, we must decide. Are we allies or enemies? The room went silent again. Finally, the head counselor stood. We will not rush to judgment. But we will watch. We will learn. He looked directly at Cade. And we will see if humanity deserves the power it claims. Cade gave a small smile. That's all I ask. Outside the palace, the suns dipped below the horizon. In the distance, ships flew overhead. In the sky, new satellites blinked online. Across the galaxy, messages were sent. Rumors spread. And in secret places, old machines began to wake. Because the universe had changed, and the rise of humanity had begun. Not with war, not with force, but with knowledge, with presence, with purpose, and with one man who refused to be ignored. Deep in space, far beyond known borders, a massive structure floated silently in orbit around a black hole. It was ancient, massive, built not by any current empire but by hands long forgotten. It was called the Ark of Sol Primus, and it had been waiting. Inside its dark halls, lights flickered to life. After centuries of silence, dust drifted in zero gravity as systems slowly rebooted. A single word echoed through its core, reawakening. Back on Thalzir Prime, Cade Rourke sat alone in his quarters, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. Lines of data scrolled past his eyes, fragments of star maps, coordinates, symbols that hadn't been seen in millennia. Prometheus had sent them. You are ready, the AI's voice whispered in his mind. The Ark has responded. Cade exhaled slowly. I hope you're right. 2 days earlier, Prometheus had revealed something shocking. Earth had not just explored the stars, they had built them, or at least they had helped shape the galaxy, in ways no one else remembered. Terraforming worlds, hiding knowledge, creating weapons so powerful even humans feared them. But when Earth fell into darkness, when war, disease, and politics shattered their golden age, all of it was buried. Now, it was waking up. Vela entered the room without knocking. She had stopped asking permission. You've been quiet, she said, crossing her arms. What's going on? Cade turned to her. We need to leave the planet. She raised an eyebrow. Again? This time it's important. He stood and pulled up the map on his screen. A blinking red dot marked a location deep in uncharted space. What is that? Vela asked. The last gift from the old world, Cade said. The Ark of Sol Primus. Vela stared at the name like it was holy. That's just a myth. No, Cade said. It's real, and it's calling me. Hours later, a small ship left Thalzir Prime under secret clearance. Only a few knew where it was going. Even fewer understood why. On board were Cade, Vela, 2 pilots, and a single AI-assisted drone for scanning. They traveled in silence, for 3 days, jumping through hidden routes only Prometheus could provide. Then, they arrived. Floating before them was the Ark. It was unlike anything ever built by modern species. Its surface shimmered like metal and crystal fused together. It pulsed with energy as if alive. Vela whispered, It's beautiful. Cade nodded. And dangerous. They docked without resistance. Inside, the air was clean. Lights still worked. Doors opened with simple human touch. As if it had been waiting for them, a voice echoed through the halls. Welcome, child of Saul. You have passed the trials. Enter and claim your birthright. They walked deeper into the structure, rooms filled with machines, books, weapons, and devices none of them recognized lined the corridors. Finally, they reached the central chamber. At its heart was a pedestal. On it, a glowing sphere floated. Vela stepped forward. What is it? Cade didn't answer. He reached out. The moment his hand touched the sphere, light exploded around them. Images filled his mind, planets burning, ships rising, empires falling. He saw Earth as it once was, towering cities, sky bridges, fleets stretching into infinity. Then he saw the fall, wars, betrayals, fear, and finally, the decision, to hide everything, to let humanity fade, until now. When the light faded, Cade staggered. Back, breathing hard, Vela caught him. What did you see? He looked at her, eyes wide. Everything. He turned to the pedestal. This isn't just a relic. It's a command center, a vault, a weapon. Vela frowned. A weapon? Cade nodded. One that can end wars before they begin or start new ones. Silence filled the chamber. Then Vela whispered, You can control it? I can, he said, but I won't. She looked surprised. Why not? Because power like this, it corrupts. Even good people become gods. And gods make mistakes. Vela studied him again. Not just as a man, not just as a diplomat, as something more. She stepped closer. Then, what do we do with it? Cade looked at the floating sphere, then at the endless halls around them. We learn, he said. We remember. We rebuild, not with force, but with truth. Vela smiled slightly. You really are different, aren't you? Cade gave a small grin. Just trying to do the right thing. Outside, the stars burned bright, and somewhere across the galaxy someone watched. Someone who knew what had just been found, and what it meant. For Earth, for the galaxy, and for the future. News of the Ark's discovery spread like fire through the galaxy. At first, it was just whispers. Rumors passed between diplomats, traders, and spies. But soon, undeniable proof emerged. Humanity had access to technology older than any known empire. They had found something powerful, and they weren't hiding anymore. On Thalzir Prime, the council debated endlessly. Some feared what this meant. Others saw opportunity. For the first time in centuries, alien nations turned their eyes toward Earth, not with pity or curiosity, but with respect, and maybe a little fear. Back on the capital world, Cade Rourke stood beside Princess Vela as she addressed the full galactic assembly. Thousands watched from across the stars. This is not a declaration of war, Vela said, her voice strong and clear. This is a call for balance. Behind her, Cade looked out over the gathered leaders. Alien species who once treated humans like children now sat in silence. Some wore expressions of doubt, others of awe. Vela continued. Humanity has returned, not to conquer but to remind us all of a forgotten truth, that no one race should dominate the stars. That history must be shared, not controlled. A Zakari noble rose from his seat. You expect us to believe that humans ruled before us? Cade stepped forward then, calm and steady. Yes, he said simply, but we don't ask you to believe because of power or threat. We ask because of truth. He raised a small device and pressed a button. Across the hall, holograms lit up, images of ancient human cities, star maps showing early exploration routes, records proving Earth's place among the stars long before most empires were born. Gasps filled the chamber. Cade lowered the device and spoke again. We do not seek to rule. We do not seek revenge for being forgotten. What we seek is a place, at the table, a voice that cannot be ignored, a future where no race stands above another. Silence followed. Then slowly, Someone clapped. Another joined. Then another. It began as a ripple. Soon it grew into a storm. Even those who doubted couldn't deny what they had seen. Humanity was back. Not with weapons, not with lies, but with truth. Weeks later, peace talks began. New alliances formed. Old grudges softened. The Ark remained hidden, its most dangerous secrets locked away by Cade himself. Prometheus stayed awake, watching, guiding, learning, because humanity had proven itself worthy not by taking, but by choosing restraint. Vela stood with Cade, one last time before he prepared to leave. "You're really going back to Earth?" she asked. Cade nodded. "I've done what I came to do." She smiled slightly. "You changed everything." He gave a small laugh. "I just reminded people who we are." She looked at him for a long moment. "Will you come back?" He met her gaze. "Maybe. One day." They stood together in the quiet of the palace garden, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon. Lights flickered in the sky. Ships moved through the heavens. And far beyond, new stars waited. Back on Earth, things were different, no longer ignored, no longer underestimated. Humanity had a seat at the Galactic Council, not because they demanded it, not because they fought for it, but because they earned it. In a quiet room at the United Earth Embassy, Cade received a message from Prometheus. "You have awakened the past. Now shape the future." He smiled. Outside, the stars shone brighter than ever, and for the first time in generations, Earth looked up. Not in fear, not in doubt, but in hope. Because humanity wasn't just part of the galaxy anymore. They were its conscience, its heart, its legacy, reclaimed.